Coming up on the FSR Sarc podcast, a key finding in determining worsening lung disease with sarcoidosis, and I had a close encounter with a bear.
This is the Sarc podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hi and welcome. This is episode 164 of the FSR Sarc podcast. I'm your host, John Carlin. The date of this recording is June 1st, 2026. I hope you're feeling as well as you can be today, and also that you are feeling hopeful. That's what I try to give you here on the podcast, is hope. And coming up, I'll be telling you about some new research which has uncovered a key indicator perhaps in why some people, especially with pulmonary sarcoidosis, have a worse case than others, and why in some people it goes away and in others it does not. And so, again, I want to let you guys know that there's research that's happening out there. This is worldwide research. This is the study I'm going to tell you about. It's coming from Europe. But don't think that the battle, the collective battle against sarcoidosis, is at a standstill, because it's not. There are people out there working on these, and I think, you're going to find that as time goes on, we're getting closer and closer to understanding what it is that drives sarcoidosis. And then from that, presumably, then medical science can come up with a cure and or better treatments. Having said that, I just took my Humira shot just about 10 minutes before beginning to record. But Humira is one of the things that helps me. Now, I got to tell you, before we get into this research, you've been very patient with me, letting me describe my recovery from my Achilles surgery just over 5 months ago, following what I call now the great pickleball accident of 2025, where I lunged for a ball and the rest was history. Well, you may recall that I am training to do a bike ride across Virginia in celebration of Virginia's and the nation's 250th anniversary. This will end in historic Yorktown, Virginia, on the 4th of July, with the fireworks and everything that goes with the 4th of July, only magnified by whatever, because it'll be the nation's 250th birthday. So, of course, Virginia, one of the original colonies, Yorktown, one of the original colonies in Virginia, yada, yada, yada. It's pretty obvious that that should be a major celebration, and that's the way it's been described to us. So as I sit here today, I am plumb exhausted from yesterday, which was my first 50-mile training ride since the surgery, and my brain is, not only do my legs not want to work, my brain doesn't want to work either. So please forgive me, but I am zonked still. However, I did it, and that feels good, and that's what training is all about. I remember 20 years ago when I was a marathon runner, and you would do your first 12-mile run in a training cycle, and you would think, I can't run another step. How am I ever going to get to 26? And yet you go through the process, you trust the process, marathon day comes, and you do it. Sometimes you do it better than others, but you get through it. So, but that is not even close to being the most interesting thing or even life-changing bike ride that I have taken this week, because I had an encounter with 5 bears just 3 days ago. It was just this past Friday. So I was working on a story with a group that's volunteers, and they build trails here in this area, and they help with the greenways. Then they go into an area that we have here outside of Roanoke called Carvin's Cove, which is this massive mountain bike center, just massive. But there isn't a lot of money to build all the trails that they have mapped out. Now, there are a lot of trails there, but over half of them have still not been built. Well, this group has been working since 2021 to build 5 years to build this trail, and they finished it last week. So I thought, Okay. They reached out to me. They know I'm a cyclist. They know that I do outdoor stories on Channel 10. And they said, would you like to do a story on this trail that we just finished? And I said, absolutely. So I got my mountain bike out for the first time since the middle of last year, because normally I mountain bike in the winter, but with the Achilles, I missed mountain bike season. So anyway, I dust the bike off and I get out there, and I meet this group and I do the interviews and so forth. And they introduce me to a guy who's, and I'm not kidding, his name is Turtle. Turtle. Yes. Apparently it's not his God-given name, but it was a nickname his parents gave him when he was 1 month old, and it stuck. So everybody knows him as Turtle. So they say Turtle, who has an e-bike, is going to do the ride with you. And I said, thank God, because I didn't want to be out there by myself. I didn't want to get lost, and who knows what you're going to get into in the woods, yada, yada, yada. So Turtle and I go riding up the trail, doot-to-do, and he's telling me about the rare flowers. There's one called turkey beard, which I had probably seen before, but hadn't ever known what it was. And apparently there's a lot of it on this trail, and it's one of the few places where you can find a lot of it. So we're looking at the turkey beard, and there's another flower that, and Turtle is one of the trail builders as well. He's very much into the flora and fauna along the trail. There's something called Galax leaf, and we're pointing that out and taking pictures. And I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be about this new trail, and I'll find a way to fold in all this business about the flowers. Well, we ride around a bend, and all of a sudden I see a bear cub scampering up a tree right next to me. And then I look down the trail and I see 2 more bear cubs scampering up a tree, like maybe, I don't know, 30 yards down the trail. And then here comes Mama Bear right next to the 2 cubs that are 30 yards down the trail. And so we have this like little standoff, because we're on the trail, Mama's on the trail, the cubs are in the tree. One of them is in a tree basically right next to me, and 2 of them are in a tree next to Mama. And I'm doing a TV story, so and I've got a GoPro on, so I'm capturing a little bit of this, but I get my cell phone out of my pocket because I want to get some cell phone video of this situation, right? But I'm kind of watching Mama, and she doesn't seem to be too angry with us, so I'm like, all right, I'll push my luck, and so we get some video of Mama standing on the trail, and, it's cell phone video, so it's not National Geographic, but you can tell. I mean, you can see her, and it's the best video I've ever gotten of a bear in the wild, that's for sure. And so we're watching, and so I think, all right, well, there's a bear cub in the tree right next to me. Let me see if I can get a picture of that. And I kind of pan over, and I'm panning up the tree where I know that the cub is, because I've just seen it with my naked eye. And as I'm taking video of that cub, Turtle looks at me and says, what are you doing pointing the camera up there? The cub is down here. And lo and behold, there's 2 cubs in that tree. In addition to the 2 cubs that are in the tree next to Mama, there are 4 bear cubs. 4. And because Turtle was looking at the one in the lower part of the tree, and I was looking at the one in the upper part of the tree. So I got video of the one on the top of the tree, but the one lower down, and I try not to make this painful here, but the one lower down kind of scampered around to the back, so all you could really see was his paws. But we do have, like, you can see him going up, and I've counted and watched the video over and over. There is no doubt there were 4 bear cubs with 1 mama, which I've never heard of, and I do a lot of outdoor stuff. I've talked to some people at a local outdoor center. They said it's extremely rare. And they also said that sometimes a biologist will capture a cub that maybe was rescued from a forest fire, and they'll put them where they know there's a mama bear with cubs, and sometimes they'll take them in. Now, we don't know if that's the case here, but be that as it may, I had all of a sudden gone from a story about flowers beside the trail to this amazing interaction with this bear. Now, to get you out of it here, Turtle and I looked at each other, and so we had probably had this little standoff with this bear for less than 2 minutes, okay? took me longer to tell you about it than it took for this to happen. So Turtle and I just get on our bicycles and we turn around and we go back the way that we came from. And the mama bear does not continue to follow us. So that's good news, right? And so we decide we're just going to go back half a mile or so, go back to basically where the trail starts and just wait. And we do, and sure enough, we turned around and went back down the trail 10, 15 minutes later, no sign of the bear, and that was that. So, phew, right? Now, people have asked me, was I scared when we saw this mama bear? And I wasn't. Maybe I should have been, but I wasn't, because the photographer in me started taking over, and I'm like, I got to get a picture of this bear. Now, if she'd been huffing and puffing and stomping and scraping her foot and charging at me, I'd have been scared. But she wasn't doing any of that. She just was kind of looking at us. And there's hikers up there. I mean, these bears are, they have occasional interactions with people, but the thing they tell you is don't get between a mama bear and her cubs. Right? If you've ever been outside, you hear that all the time. Well, technically, we were pretty close to being between her and her cubs, because those cubs in the tree next to me were, we were essentially between her and the cubs. So anyway, that was the situation with that. And then people say, do you carry bear spray? And I don't. And Turtle, who worked on building this trail, said that he had seen bears over the many years he's been building trails in the region like 50 times. So he's got kind of a much better sense of bear awareness than I do. But he does not like people to carry bear spray. He doesn't carry it. None of the trail workers carry it. Because if you spray one of these bears and then all of a sudden they have this sort of negative reaction to people and they become dangerous, then the Fish and Game Department comes in and puts them down. And that's the last thing you want, right? That's the last thing you want, especially since there's never been a bear attack there. There probably have been 5 in the state of Virginia in the last 20 years. I mean, we do them on the news occasionally. There will occasionally be a bear attack, and we'll cite the statistics. And I don't remember what they are exactly, except to tell you that they are extremely rare. So, no bear spray, and no need for it this time. These are black bears, not grizzly bears, in case you're wondering. So yeah, my interaction with the bear, that's my bear story, and I'm sticking to it. We're going to do a story on WSLS 10 where I work, and you'll be able to click on a link with this once the story airs. As I'm speaking, it has been written but not edited and has not been yet presented to the public, but it will be sometime during the first week of June here in 2026. All right, coming up, I'm going to tell you more about this research study about sarcoidosis and why some people are at a higher risk of worsening lung function. That's coming up right after this.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter podcast. All right, welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. And so now I want to tell you about this link. I want to tell you about this. It started out with a link. I'm going to tell you about this study that I can link to for you that came out in Sarcoidosis News. And again, sometimes these things become very scientific and over my head, and probably not the most interesting thing to listen to, but I want to give you enough that you get the gist of it. So the study says that a common genetic variant of the TNFR1 gene, which encodes a protein involved in regulating inflammation, may help identify people with sarcoidosis who are at a higher risk of worsening lung function, according to the study. Researchers found that patients carrying 2 copies of the more common form of the genetic variant, and I'm going to say this number once because just so I have it on the record, the variant RS1800693 showed poorer lung function and greater decline over time than those carrying at least 1 copy of the alternative form of the variant. So the TNFR1 might be associated with lung function impairment and decline in sarcoidosis patients, the researchers wrote, adding that the genetic markers, such as this one, quote, may provide opportunities for the early identification of at-risk populations and also tailored treatment. So that sounds pretty promising, right? And this study was published in the journal Scientific Reports. Some people, it says, may develop Lofgren syndrome, that's Lofgren with umlaut, so I believe that's Lofgren syndrome, a milder form of sarcoidosis that usually resolves on its own within months to a year. So that's one of the things that if you're in the sarcoidosis world, you know, some people self-resolve, and the rest of us with chronic sarcoidosis, it does not without some sort of intervention, and oftentimes even not then. The other non-Lofgren syndrome has a variable presentation where the disease burden and the prognosis are related to organ involvement and damage, according to the researchers. Now, in people with the non-Lofgren sarcoidosis, that occurs in more than 90% of cases, and it can lead to impaired lung function, irreversible lung damage, and an increased risk of death. Unfortunately, that is a fact that we kind of know. 90% is a high figure based upon some of the studies that we've talked about here, but that's what they're saying here in this study. Now, the lung damage is driven in part by TNF-alpha, a signaling molecule that helps activate inflammatory cells by binding to one of its main receptor proteins called TNFRI. Excessive TNF-alpha signaling can contribute to persistent inflammation and tissue damage. In the study, the researchers investigated the frequencies of the people with this variant and whether they were associated with disease progression, and they retrospectively analyzed genetic and lung function data from 2 independent groups of non-Lofgren sarcoidosis patients. I know I'm murdering that word, I'm sorry. There were 108 in Germany and 393 in Norway, and then there were 2 control groups. Participants in Germany were followed for an average of 6.5 years, those in Norway for 7.9 years. So a pretty in-depth study here. The researchers examined how lung function changed over time according to the genetic profile, and this findings suggest that this RS variation, quote, may provide opportunities for early identification of people with non-Lofgren sarcoidosis who are at a higher risk of lung disease progression and who might benefit from closer monitoring or tailored treatment. So that's the finding, and I'll put a link to it. Again, this was published in Sarcoidosis News, and that really says to me that people are making progress out there, and we've had some researchers on who get right down there and they're studying these molecules and the TNF alpha signaling and all the different things that you've got to get literally that granular if we're going to figure out what's going on with sarcoidosis, why it's worse in some people and why it's not in others. Speaking of that, I want to continue talking about veterans because FSR is seeking input from veterans. The FSR is launching a new military veterans survey to better understand how SARC affects those who have served in the military. And by sharing your experiences, you're therefore helping researchers and clinicians learn more about the potential causes, symptoms, and treatment responses within military veteran communities. So FSR wants to know about your service history, what you might have been exposed to, if you've received care or not received care once the sarcoidosis arrived on your doorstep, and so forth. They're looking at a higher prevalence because veterans have 4 to 5 times higher annual incidence of SARC than non-veterans. There are increased risk factors associated with service, and it doesn't matter. Army, Air Force, just about any branch, also deployments in Southwest Asia, I would say Southeast Asia as well, Afghanistan. Burn pits have been an issue, exposure to burn pits in particular, other hazardous materials, dust storms can be a problem, smoke can be a problem. And then also under the PACT Act, there are some VA disability benefits for people with sarcoidosis. Do you know about that? Do you not know about that? Have you applied for VA benefits and been accepted or turned down? Because it is now considered a presumptive condition for veterans exposed to toxic fumes. So there might be something out there for you. And then also FSR wants to know about any diagnostic challenges that you may have had, which we all do, right? But it could be even worse for veterans. So please reach out to FSR, reach out to me. I've interviewed one veteran, and I would like to talk to more veterans and have you share your story. Dan Frank was episode 162, and he did reach out to the VA, and he did qualify for benefits. So, and he had an interesting story to tell, but I would like to have you come on and talk about your story, and FSR would like to talk to you based for research. So, a couple of things to think about. All right, this is a good time to contact me if you'd like to share your story on the podcast, carlinagency@gmail.com. The Sarkfighter song is Zombie by Mark Steyer. Hear Mark's story, the story behind the lyrics, in both episode 12 and episode 118. I release this podcast every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty dog Dougal is curled up in the chair in my office. Dougal makes my life so much better, as does my adorable rescue mutt, Shandy. If you're new here and you're just trying to figure out what Sark is, listen to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart. My story is episode 1. Please send me an email. It's in the show notes, carlinagency@gmail.com. And until next time, keep fighting.
Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking,